Hey, team players, welcome to Local Football Flavor. In today's episode, we're going to be doing a player comparison of two running backs that seems like their situations have dramatically changed by things that they weren't in control of. But before we dive into that, if you are interested in joining one of the Local Football Flavor Best Ball Leagues, they'll be taking place on FanDuel. Reach out to us at our email that you can see on our YouTube channel and let us know which denomination you want to play for. Right now, the most common one is the $20 Best Ball League, and we look forward to talking to you. So, Bob, today's episode is about the running backs whose situations have drastically changed, and it's not their fault. And that is going to be two guys that people are going to be debating on the turn in Jonathon Taylor and Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. In Taylor's case, he's going from the world's most incompetent quarterback situation, mostly due to their owner flip-flopping his mind like 6 times, to having either a Minshew or the rookie, and the rookie looks like he's going to run the ball like crazy, versus the other side of the field over in Cleveland, which had always been dependent upon 2 heavy running backs in Hunt and Chubb, but now they want to become a passing team. And Chubb is basically going to be, and more importantly, they're turning their offense from an under center offense into a shotgun offense. And we look at how that's going to affect Chubb and Taylor. That's the starting point I look at. So we have 2 guys that were incredibly reliable 2 years ago. Taylor won people leagues 2 years ago. He was the fantasy football MVP. Chubb has been historically a solid running back. Mm-hmm. With these 2 changes, should we be taking them down out of the first round, out of that turn area, or should we just be like, you know what? They're going to end up being reliable. It's going to be a big hit, more trustworthy than Eckler.
No, and this is going back to our video from the other day. This is one of the reasons why I hesitate on Devontae Adams is because you have 2 really stellar running back choices, and oftentimes you have the ability to take Saquon and Taylor, or you have the ability to take Taylor and Chubb, or Saquon and Chubb, or CeeDee Lamb and Chubb, whose situation we are confident is going to be productive. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I'm not really worried about either of these 2 running backs is for a lot of the reasons why we've already stated for a couple of other teams, mainly for Bijan Robinson. We've said Bijan Robinson is going to get 30 carries a game, maybe 25, mm-hmm. And that game script really isn't going to change much. He's the guy. He's reliable. He's what we think he is. He's going to tote the rock whether they're winning or losing. Now, we think that Atlanta's going to be winning more games, potentially, than Indianapolis. But Taylor, I think, will benefit more so than have a detriment from having another weapon on the field like Anthony Richardson. I think he'll benefit from having a player like Gardner Minshew who, let's face it, Matt Ryan had his time, and it wasn't last year. Mm-hmm. And I think Minshew is an upgrade in some respects, and that's not dissing Matt Ryan's career at all. That's just saying that it's an upgrade at this point in time. Mm-hmm. But Taylor got hurt last year. And I mean, he's had suspect quarterbacks for the last 2 years. And we went in last season saying, we're going to draft Taylor number 1 overall. And he got hurt. And so when we take a look at the stats here from Jonathon Taylor, you're going to see a picture that says, well, why is Anthony Richardson the only reason why this guy's falling down? Because I don't see people saying, oh, because Joe Burrow runs for a couple of touchdowns here and there, this is the reason why I'm not taking Jamar Chase. Or, oh, because Jalen Hurts rushes from so many touchdowns near the goal line, this is the reason I'm not taking A.J. Brown. That seems silly to me for that being the number 1 reason people are saying that I'm not going to take Jonathon Taylor. When I look at his stats from last year and this year, with the pedestrian quarterback play, he still almost put up 1,000 yards rushing. Mm-hmm. And they knew what they were going to do. They knew what was going to happen.
They didn't have a choice.
The season before that.
And Bob, how many games did he miss last year?
Let me get the actual games missed here because ESPN is kind of being a little bit salty here. So he played for 11 games last year. 192 rushes, 861 yards, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, that's not what we're wanting, but like I said in a previous video, that's the average numbers for Eckler on a full season. We haven't seen Eckler top 1,000 yards, but we know that Taylor went for 1,811. That's insanity to me. And in 2020, he went for 1,169. And so and that's with a quarterback. Let's go back to his quarterback here. If we just take a look at who was throwing.
2020 would have been Rivers.
Rivers? Mm-hmm. So we have Rivers, and then in 2021 was who? Wentz. Okay? So those two quarterbacks, historically speaking, they could pass the ball. I mean, people are talking Rivers Hall of Famer. They're not talking about.
Well, they all had better days before they put on the blue.
Wentz has been to the Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, right? I'm pretty sure.
He was on it. He's not the one who won it, but he was on it.
So, we're getting to. I think it's just getting silly at this point in time to say that Anthony Richardson's going to snipe a couple of touchdowns from him. Yeah, he's going to snipe a couple of touchdowns from him if he plays. But the question is that is there going to be less pressure on Jonathon Taylor? I think so. When you have to worry about a second weapon in Anthony Richardson's athletic ability, or you have to worry about Gardner Minshew throwing the ball down the field. I'm not saying worry about Gardner Minshew. I'm just saying do what you would normally do with Gardner Minshew. Mm-hmm. I think a floor of 861 yards, that's getting hurt a ton of games. And that's the low. And so I don't think that you're looking at any production that's going to get worse than 861 yards. Now, same reason Devonta Adams. I'm hesitant on Devonta Adams because, the touchdowns might not be there. Well, that same could be true about Jonathon Taylor as well, where the touchdowns might not be there. However, you are now taking the third or fourth running back off the board in Jonathon Taylor, and you're not taking the ninth or eighth best wide receiver on the board statistically or whatever, however you want to dice it down, that Devonta Adams is going. And there's a little bit of a positional advantage there. If I am taking the fourth best running back over the ninth best wide receiver, both of Adams and Taylor have the same touchdown concern, but I don't think it's going to be any question of the talent.
Yeah, and I do believe that Taylor, as being the back, is obviously more valuable. And when I look at Taylor overall, he won people leagues. I mean, the guy ticks off. And when we look at the actual on the field of the Colts last year, some of the biggest name linemen are in Indianapolis, but they had down years last year, mostly because of the quarterback situation. So as we look at what's going to move forward here, the Colts have a line that should perform much better this year than last year. And overall, the Cleveland Browns, talking about Nick Chubb now, have had one of the best lines in the league for a couple of years now. The question for Chubb is twofold. First is they got rid of what always held Chubb back from being the bona fide first-round pick was Kareem Hunt was also on his team, and they never gave Chubb more than 25 carries a game. You look through his career, it's very rare when it happens. It's not part of Cleveland's DNA. Well, now there's not a backup to Chubb anymore, and it's his last year on his deal. Are they going to just literally run him until he's dry? Possible. But more so, does changing their offense to a shotgun-based offense affect what you expect out of Chubb this year, knowing that he's not going to hit the line with the same speed that he normally does?
I don't necessarily think that I would. All things considered, Houston, back when Deshaun Watson was on Houston, they had Carlos Hyde and David Johnson. Carlos Hyde the year before David Johnson. So in the year that Deshaun Watson threw for 33 touchdowns, David Johnson had 641 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and a couple of receiving touchdowns and receptions. The year prior, Carlos Hyde had a 1,000-yard season. And that was when he was like,
And Chubb is a way better athlete than both of them.
And so when you look at Chubb's numbers over the past couple of seasons that he's been in the league, 2022, 2021, 2020, and 2019, I'm going to also include his rookie year because he almost eclipsed 1,000 yards in his rookie year. He has not been – his rookie year was 996 yards. So he hasn't not produced being a 1,000-yard rusher. Now, touchdown-wise – reception-wise, you're looking at a player who has 20, 36, 16, 20, 27. So he's not getting you it in that PPR, but he's not seeing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They're throwing him the ball when it's necessary.
Well, they were throwing it to Hunt, and Hunt's not going to be there now.
Well, and you look at the touchdowns. Going backwards in 2022, 12-8, 12-8, 8. And that's just rushing. When you go in receiving, that's 1-1-0-0-2.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, even with a scheme change, they're not going to take their best player and say, we're not all of a sudden going to give you the ball. I think Chubb is skilled as an athlete enough to be able to adjust to situations and hit bulls in different ways. And if it doesn't happen, there's a good chance that he will figure it out. It's not a rookie. He's going to be able to figure it out. Where you said, it's a contract year, Chubb needs to perform. Let's see what happens. Well, I don't think he's performing necessarily for the Cleveland Browns. He's going to be performing for the money because I don't think he's going to be with the Cleveland Browns in the upcoming season because they have a lot of money invested in Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Watson, there's a couple of things to look at too, is that he's capable of putting up 30 touchdowns. He's capable of putting up 20 touchdowns. He's capable of running the ball as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the same knocks that you're going to put on Taylor and he's sliding down would be the same knocks that I would put on Chubb, but Chubb's moving up.
Mm-hmm.
It's being drafted higher than some ADPs are saying. So if you're going to do that, the only difference between Chubb and Taylor right now is touchdown production. He is going to have more opportunities to score touchdowns because we think Deshaun Watson's going to be able to move the ball down the field.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be able to hit Njoku. He's going to be able to hit Cooper. He's going to be able to hit Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Not stellar names outside of Cooper, but when you look at it, these guys they're good. They're good enough. They did well with Jacoby Brissett. They did well with, Zach Wilson last year. These are guys that can produce points.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that Chubb couldn't because he doesn't hit, above 20 carries a game, he's efficient. He's a good runner. And he's going to see the ball. They're going to pass him the ball at least 20 times a game. But I'm not relying on him for the PPR there. This same thing goes for Taylor. Taylor, I think, will top out at like 40 receptions maybe. His floor is probably like 25. And so these two guys are so similar. But for the same reasons you're moving Taylor down the board for the touchdown production, you're moving Chubb up the board. And here's the rub. You could get both of them.
Yeah, you can get them at the turn, yeah.
If I can have both of them, as I said in a previous episode, I want to walk out of the draft with a number 1 wide receiver, top 15 wide receiver. But if I can walk out with 2 running backs that could potentially end the year top 5 in the league, I would want to do that.
Absolutely. And in the next episode, we're going to discuss 2 of those guys that could be there for you in the 3rd round that had the potential of being a top 5 talent. 2 young guys that are on fire, and we look forward to breaking them down here with you guys tomorrow. But Bob, if there's any final thoughts you got here about either Chubb or Taylor, we want to make sure we don't do this episode short.
Yeah, I think Chubb and Taylor, they're going to be drafted in your league. If you're in a 10-team league, they're going to be drafted anywhere between 8 and probably 14.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a 12-team league, I'm seeing them come a little bit close together. Like I said, the owner who takes Barkley or Taylor usually might sit off on Chubb, but if if they value running backs a lot, they'll take Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
And he might fall a little bit in a 12-team league, but he shouldn't because he's a number one running back. He has the chance to finish the year as the number one overall running back one. Taylor, the only thing that's keeping him back from being that overall running back one that he was a couple of years ago is that touchdown production. But if people are even thinking about drafting Anthony Richardson, in the later rounds of the draft, then there's good reason to say that Taylor's production isn't going to dip at all. Same with Minshew. I don't think Indianapolis is going to be a worse team than they were last year.
On that note, the Colts play the NFC South plays the AFC South. And when we look at that division crossover, you got 10 of your games are the other division and your own division. They stack themselves up very well because the Titans aren't good at stopping the run. Houston's not good at anything. And then when we look at the other conference there, with the exception of the Saints, they don't really stop the run that either. And when they go and play the AFC North, everyone runs like Cleveland. So there's 9 games where the Colts are going to be like, we can run the ball like crazy. And just as an overall perspective, I think the Colts are going to win a lot more football games than Vegas has, and they're one of the hardest overs I'm hitting.
Yeah, and to your point about schedule, too, is that Chubb hits the AFC North for 6 games. And
the other 3 know how to stop the run.
Those are 6 games that are challenging. So if there's any other thing that you want to say against, if anything, you would hope that Deshaun Watson will add something to the team to make them better so that they can't oversell on the run and stop Chubb to the degree that, they might have in the past. But he's faced those defenses, 4 or 5 times now, and he's still eclipsed over 1,000 yards on the year in each one of those seasons. So there's a lot to like about Chubb. There's a lot to like about Taylor. And I understand their ADPs. I understand their draft positions. And like I said, if you're a person who's drafting, you should be able, and you're at that turn, you should be able to walk out with both of them.
Absolutely. So yes, team players, thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe, and we'll be with you again here tomorrow.